All right, so it's just on 2 o'clock. We might as well get started and people can dial in as they're ready. So thank you for everyone who's joined. For those who don't know me, my name's Bonnie Eklum and I'm the Manager Program Operations for TAAHC. And also, so I'll be presenting today with Associate Professor Ray Thomas, who's the Research Education Lead for TAAHC. And so, as you'd be aware, TAAHC has opened 2 funding rounds for researchers in Northern Queensland, our seed funding scheme and our clinician research and fellowship scheme. So today, this session will focus on the seed funding scheme. We have a presentation that Ray and I will run through. We finish off with some FAQs that we've already received from people, and then there will be an opportunity to jump in at the end and ask any questions. So if you do have any questions as we go along, feel free to pop them in the chat, but there will be space at the end for us to answer any questions that you have. So I will just start sharing my screen with you all. So can I ask, are people seeing?
Notes page, Bonnie.
Notes page, yep. How about now? Done. Excellent. All right. So to start us off, again, just clarify, this is our seed funding scheme. We also will run separate sessions on our clinician researcher fellowship scheme. If you do attend both, there might be some overlapping info, but we will try and keep that fairly brief. So to start off with, most of you would be aware of what TAAHC is, but for those of you who aren't, we're a research collaboration between the 5 hospital and health services in Northern Queensland. So we go from Mackay out west to northwest and then right up to Torres and Cape. Members also include the Northern Queensland Primary Health Network, the Queensland Aboriginal and Islander Health Council and James Cook University. So TAAHC was established as a company in 2019, and when we started up, one of the first things that TAAHC did was to establish its research themes, and these research themes really seek to respond to the priority health challenges across our members. So they're listed on the slide there, very briefly reflective of the Northern Queensland population. Our research themes include service delivery to regional, rural, remote, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander populations, innovative health workforce models, so how services are delivered through our workforce in the region, non-communicable diseases with high regional prevalence, and also reflecting our location, infectious diseases. So if you want to learn a little bit more about who TAAHC is as an organisation, what we do, our website has lots of resources, so that's listed there on the slide. And in particular, and with relevance to our seed funding scheme, it would be good to have a look at our TAAHC research strategy. So we do have a research strategy. This is our second research strategy, and it runs from 2023 to 2026. So this research strategy, it defines our mission and our purpose, which again, when we run through the selection criteria for TAAHC and Ray takes us through that, will become more important. It also looks at our aims and actions, so what TAAHC is trying to achieve, and a little bit of background information around what are the challenges and priorities in our region. So that research strategy is available on our website. So if you click on the homepage, you'll find research strategy, and then you'll be able to look at our strategy. So that's just some screenshots there. It is this one here, and it looks like that when you bring it up. So in our research strategy, we do identify that TAAHC will run funding schemes, and one of them, the focus of today's session, being our seed funding scheme. And so in the funding rules for our scheme, which is also available on our website, and hopefully people have had a chance to have a look at those, and if you haven't, we can show you where those are. But our funding rules outline the purpose of the scheme. So it says what is the aim of the scheme and what are the objectives of the scheme. And I won't read out what's on the slide there, but the key takeaways for the seed funding scheme is that it's for translational research that is aligned with our TAAHC strategic research themes. So they're the ones that we mentioned on the slide previously, and they're about collaboration and partnership. So if you take nothing away else from today, that's really the scheme highlights for that seed funding scheme. Translational research that addresses our TAAHC strategic research themes, and that support collaboration and partnership. And there's also there, we do hope that those projects through our seed funding are able to attract external research funding. And in the selection criteria, you will be asked to address how your project will, if successful, will position you to access that external research funding. So our funding rules also contain the eligibility for the TAAHC seed funding. That is really important that you familiarize yourselves with the eligibility. I've listed it on the slide. It is in our funding rules. I won't go through all of the eligibility requirements there. You can read them on the slide under the funding rules. But I guess two things to really note is that for all applications before they get to the peer review stage, we will do within TAAHC an initial eligibility check. So we'll run through each application and make sure it's eligible. And if it is determined that your application is not eligible, it won't proceed through to that peer review phase. And the other thing I really wanted to highlight with the eligibility is that the fact that your project aligns with one of our strategic research themes, one or more, is an eligibility issue. So to get through to that peer review phase, you need to demonstrate that your project is addressing one of those strategic research themes. Also, probably another key thing to note with the eligibility is that the project has to be a collaboration between 3 or more of our TAAHC members. And so to meet those eligibility requirements, if you had an application that had investigators from 3 different TAAHC members listed, you would meet that eligibility requirement. And then in the selection criteria, which we'll speak to later, you will need to be able to articulate further how you are collaborating across those 3 members. A little bit to note is given that 2 of our members, so Quake and the NQPHN, are what you call advisory or commissioning bodies, we have determined that if one of your lead investigators is from a general practice provider or from an Aboriginal and Islander community controlled organisation within North Queensland, for the purposes of our eligibility, we will consider them to be affiliated with the TAAHC member, NQPHN or Quake. And just to confirm, when we mention TAAHC members, we do mean those organisations that are partners within TAAHC, and they are listed on our website. They're the ones we mentioned earlier in the slides. So next bit of our presentation looks at the selection criteria, and I will hand over to Ray to walk you through those.
Thanks. Look, we just wanted to alert you to the fact that obviously a lot of you will be new to applying to grants. That's, that's part of what some of the seed funding is for, is to help build capacity and stuff. So for those people who are very used to applying for grants, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to listen to me talk about selection criteria. But I really wanted to highlight it for people who didn't have expertise or experience in that area. So the biggest thing to take away from a couple of these slides that I'm going to show you talking about selection criteria is that there are 2 forms that you want to download and think about and write to for the selection criteria. So what Bonnie mentioned was the funding rules, which tells you all about what those rules might be. And they have the broad selection criteria, which is most of the orange, right? But when you go to the application preview, so you're going to have to enter this into an online portal called Smarty Grants. When you go to that, that's what the grey is. The grey kind of gives you a bit more detail about what we want to see in this. So you're going to want to download both those forms and have them in your mind because they have a little bit more detail, which I think is useful. The other thing, so remember this project impact is important for TAAHC, right? We want to know the extent to which your outputs will contribute to meaningful advances in equitable health outcomes, service delivery, practice or policy in our region. And as Bonnie mentioned, they must be consistent with the research themes that were identified by the board a while ago. So the project impact is going to be weighted at 40% of your score for the grant, okay? And the grey section talks about some of the things you want to address in that part. We want to talk about what are systemic and significant healthcare that you are going to address. How has your particular project, what are the outcomes of your project that have the potential to drive change in our region? And we also want you to ask, what are the project outcomes? And we're going to ask you to do that in 700 words or less. Okay, so you're going to have to craft that nice and tight, remembering that these schemes are about building capacity too, right? So it's really important that you learn how to write succinctly. We're a friendly environment, but we're helping to craft your grant writing skills as well. Next, please, Bonnie. So the next criteria is project methodology, and that's worth 25%. That'd be weighted as 25%. And again, what we're looking for here is that you have told us what your research question is. What is that the problem that you want to solve in your project, right? That's the research question. And then the approach is the methodology. How are you going to do? What are you going to do to address that problem? What are the techniques that are you going to use in your project? What are the interventions? Are there controls? What are your statistical approaches, either qualitative or quantitative? But outline those to us. And how are you going to collect the data? And then what we want to know, as Bonnie suggested too, these are called seed funding grants, right? That means this money is given in the hope that you will actually have information to go to, you'll get the data to apply for something bigger. It's a seeding grant, right? So we want you to know, how will the data you're going to collect generate quality pilot data that you might be able to use later, all right? And then when we're talking about where are you going to go next, we want to know, have you thought about future funding applications? Here's the type word. We're going up to 500 words, right? So craft it, hone it, put it into an abstract form for us. Next, please, Bonnie. Capacity, capability, and resources delivered, 25%, right? Yeah, thanks, Genevieve. So what are you going to do? Okay, this really relates to what is the team skills that you need to deliver your project. So research is a team sport. Who's on your team and what skills do they have that are critical for your project to succeed? So we'll be looking for, the assessment panel will look for the appropriate mix of skills, right? Do you have enough people on your team who are able to deliver the project in that way? And how have the members of the project team contributed to or been involved with the translation of research findings, right? What are they going to do about that? So we're really looking for, you have to craft a team that actually have the skills to deliver this project and have contributed to or been involved in the translation of these research findings, right? So we don't want hangers on, we actually want active team members. And these kind of categories are broad across most grants. Do that up to 500 words. Thanks, Bonnie. And the last criterion for seed funding that is weighted is we're looking for 10% for collaboration and partnership. This is important, and it goes to that eligibility criteria. So Bonnie said that you will be eligible for the round if you have 3 or more TAAHC members as collaborators on your project. This is the section that we want you to tell us, how are you going to do that? How does your project facilitate partnership and collaboration across the members, right? It's not just about you and your stuff. How is it going to work across the members? And then how does the project strengthen capacity for people across the TAAHC members? And it's a short section, so it's 250 words. But just tell us, how are you going to do that? You have to be eligible, you have to do it. How is it going to work? I've got one more slide. Oh, 2 more slides, I think, Bonnie. Yep, next. There is another part of our selection criteria that is important to Northern Queensland, and we ask you to fill this out, and it does have proportions weighted to it, but it isn't used as a scoring mechanism. But it's about the Indigenous Research Excellence criteria, right? So we want to know, in your project, does it apply to your project or does it not apply to your project? But you have to address this criterion either way. Okay, tell us what it is. If you do use a larger proportion of First Nations people in your project or collect data from that, you need to be able to demonstrate substantial community engagement. What is the benefit to these groups of people? Is it sustainable and transferable? And how are you building capacity in these group of people? So in our population, it would probably apply, but you need to articulate if it does not apply to your situation and articulate why. Next slide, please. All right, I lied. I have 2 more slides now. Okay, so parts of the submission form that are not in the selection criteria, right? Remember, I've asked you to download 2 forms, okay? So you will notice in the application form, it asks you for a bit of extra stuff. And I've only put down here things that you might go, oh, it's the last day and I've forgotten to get, right? Don't leave it till the last day. You're going to be asked for a short summary, up to 100 words. Nail it. Tell us really good what is there, what it's about. Like, you know, go there. What are the strategic themes? You'll have to tick a box. Tell us which ones that your project relates to, 1 or more. You'll be asked what are some milestones, what are your project deliverables? You'll be asked to comment on consumer involvement, right? You'll need to give us a budget and the justification for that budget. So the budget comes in a table and the justification is 200 words up to. You need a letter of support or letters of support from your organizations, and you can have references. Probably a good idea to have references. Now I've got the last one, general tips for you. All right. Start early. Start now. Okay. Have an idea, start now. Like I said, download those forms before the due date and before you start to write. Know our strategic themes. Make sure your projects align. Make your application meaningful to those schemes, right? And our strategy and our mission statement. When you're writing, make sure you write for a knowledgeable person, but someone who's not knowledgeable in your area. Get feedback and revise it again and again. Okay, I'm done. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks, Ray. And as Ray mentioned a couple of times, there is, you will be asked to submit your application electronically using our Smarty Grant system. So when you go to the TAAHC website and you go, yes, I want to apply, take me to Smarty Grants, you'll be presented with this page. And you can see here you've got a couple of options. If you're feeling bold, you can jump right in and start your submission. Or as Ray has suggested, you have the option to either preview the form. So that's this little magnifying glass here. So that will give you an online preview of the form. And probably your best option, as Ray has suggested, is download that preview form. So you can download the preview form, you'll be able to see everything that you're going to have to submit in your application, and you can create your own Word document, answer all the questions you need to do. Then when you're ready, come back, start your submission, cut and paste those in. If anyone has any trouble using the Smarty Grants system, give myself a call or email. The numbers are there on that submission page. So there's my contact number there and our email. It is a relatively straightforward system. We haven't had any issues with applicants using it in the past, but if you do, just give us a yell. So I thought I would finish up today's session with some questions that we've already received. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, or once I finish talking, just, butt on in it and let us know what your question is. Someone's pointed out in the funding rules under section 2.4, it does say that TAAHC will not duplicate funding that applicants might have already received. So what that means is if you are successful in receiving a TAAHC seed funding grant, when you go to accept that grant, you will be asked to confirm that there is no duplication of funding for the project that you've been funded through via TAAHC. And when we mean duplication of funding, we just want to know that the specific research activity that TAAHC has funded, you have not already received funding for that from another project. Because we know that people will put one or more applications in, they might have already received funding. We are also very well aware that applicants will often have to manage their overall program of research across multiple granting rounds. We're very much okay with that. But what we are really interested in knowing is that the things that you have requested from TAAHC, so the specific budget items, including salary, the specific research question that you are asking, the specific experimental design, you haven't received funding for those specific items from anywhere else. Okay. And so again, very aware that applicants will have to manage different aspects of their research funded from different programs, but we really need to be able to be assured that what we are funding here might feed into an overall program of research, but does relate to a specific research activity. So that's really what we mean around duplication of funding, and it will only be asked of you if you are successful. One of the other questions we received is around how salary costs can be used if you have requested those from seed as part of your seed funding application. So seed funding, we do say an eligible cost is salary for research or technical staff to support the project. And there's a couple of questions there around really what we refer to the actual employment arrangements on the ground. So can you increase someone's hours to do the work, where the staff can be employed, can the salary costs be used flexibly? And all I would say to that is when you put in your budget for the seed funding, you will be asked to justify any of your budget item requests, including salary costs. And we would expect when we say justify a budget, you're going to tell us what that person is going to do, what they're needed for. But when it comes down to the actual individual employment arrangements of that person, we do leave that as the responsibility of the lead organisation. So that's the organisation that in the application, you're going to say, yes, this is the person that's going to, this is the organisation that's going to take overall responsibility for the administration of my research project. And that's the one we will enter into a funding contract with. So provided you use the salary on the purpose that you told us that it was for. So if you told us that you wanted to employ a person who was going to go out and interview people and you needed X amount of money for that person, provided that person goes out and interviews people and you use that X amount of dollars, what their actual employment arrangements on the ground, we will leave that to you. That's not anything that TAAHC is specifying in your funding rules. So we also had a question around collaboration. And so what is the actual definition of collaboration in the funding rules? So where collaboration becomes an issue is really in two aspects. There is an eligibility issue where we've said that your seed funding application has to be a collaboration between 3 or more TAAHC members. There are 8 TAAHC members. They're the organisations we listed up front, available on our TAAHC website if you need to check who they are. And then there's also a question in the selection criteria where you have to articulate how your project encourages and facilitates collaboration and partnership. So in terms of eligibility, if you have 3 investigators who list their organisation as a different TAAHC member, so just say you had your lead investigator was from Townsville Hospital, you had another investigator from Cairns Hospital, and then your third investigator was from Mount Isa Hospital, you would meet the eligibility. That's a collaboration between 3 TAAHC members. In terms of addressing the selection criteria, you would then need to actually articulate to us how that partnership looks like on the ground. How actually are our investigators from Cairns, Mount Isa and Townsville coming together to deliver the project? And so that will look different for different projects. So we can't provide, a specific example of what that might look like. But definitely, as Ray has picked up, the peer review panel is going to be looking for how is this a meaningful collaboration and partnership? How is this team actually working together to deliver this project? And how is this project really speaking to TAAHC's mission and purpose around building research capacity and capability in Northern Queensland and addressing some of the key health challenges that our region is providing? So hopefully that provides a little bit more collaboration around that collaboration and partnership requirement. So that is the end of, I guess, the formal session. So I will stop sharing screen, and I think there's might be some questions in the chat. So I think link to the Smarty Grants portal doesn't seem to be working. We will look into that, Nikki, and get back to you around. It was working for me today, but we'll definitely check. So in the absence of any other questions in the chat, did anyone want to put a hand up or ask any questions? I will stop speaking so people can do that.
Sorry, I was trying to type and then I thought, oh, I'll be too slow. I just wanted to check with obviously you can't apply for multiple grants. What about the R-Trip fellowship? Because that's, yeah. Does that count as a grant or not?
So is that in terms of the duplication of funding issue or?
Yes.
Yeah, so it will count as a grant. And so if you are successful in getting an R-Trip and a TAAHC TAAHC seed funding, when we send out the letter of offer, you'll just be asked to tell us that there is no duplication of funding. And if you have received an R-TRIP fellowship, you would just need to articulate, you know, what is the difference between what is TAAHC funding, what is the R-TRIP fellowship funding, and how there is a difference between those.
Yep. So even though it's contributing to the same project, it's funding different parts of the project.
Yes, very much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we would need to be clear on. We do understand that, yes, people have a program of research. They're going to be, you know, working towards that research project with different bits of funding, but you basically need to tell us what's the piece that this is funding and how is it different from this other piece over here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
We got a question about whether the slides will be available. Just to let everybody know that this is being recorded. It will be uploaded on the TAAHC website, so you'll be able to watch it ad nauseum, knock yourself out. So that'll be up there all the time. The reason that we're doing that is to make sure everybody gets the same information. All of our FAQs will also be uploaded on the TAAHC website too. So we're taking notes.
And I would just say, probably give us at least 24 hours to be uploading everything to the website. So if you don't see it this afternoon, that's why. Might just give it another 30 seconds. So any other questions, concerns, feedback? No. Okay then. Well, I guess we will wrap it up there then. And I should say, if you do have any questions, my contact details are on the web, but Bonnie or Ray, if you need either of us, taahc.jcu.edu.au, and we'll do our best to answer. But otherwise, I will leave it there. Thank you everyone for coming, and hopefully we'll see some applications from you. Bye everyone.